let me talk about this Pica protocol. It was developed and it was released in February of this year. It was developed by the DD Health Issues Advisory Committee, which is led by Arlene Holmes. She's a nurse at ODDS, the Office of Developmental Disability Services at the state. And I believe the goal of that group was to identify common support needs around the issue of Pica, which is a very important issue that some of the people that we support experience. And assembling those support needs into a protocol format that we all recognize and that our direct support staff already understand. So that's what they did. I was very grateful that they asked for contribution from OTAC as well, and I was able to sit at the table with them. We had some great conversations about some of the points on the protocol. I look forward to reviewing it with you. So you can download the form at otac.org/ISP/forms. If you scroll down about halfway down the page, you'll see Pica Protocol and a link to be able to click and download that. Just wanted to note that there is only the standard or handwritten version of the form available. There is not a template available for this protocol, and there's currently no plans to develop that, but you should find everything you need within the standard version of the form that is available. So let's just jump in and walk through. And so I'm going to actually switch my screen over to the Pica protocol inside Word so that we can actually walk through it a little easier. So just when you step back and look at it, it should look really familiar to you with, as I mentioned, that it already follows the layout and formatting that you would expect with the other Fatal 4 protocols, which have been published for quite some time. So you're going to see that familiar description of the issue at the top. You'll see Section 1 is prevention, preventative steps. Section 2 has those signs and symptoms. Section 3, what to do if any signs and symptoms are observed. Section 4 has that urgent response instructions. Now, if you'll bear with me, I know a number of people right now are experiencing allergy issues, and I've got this little tickle in my throat from allergies, so bear with me as I try not to cough too much in your ears during today's conversation. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on this form so you can see it a little better, and let's just walk through from the top. So right at the very top, you'll notice that this Pica the word Pica in the title is, as you might remember from the seizure protocol, you can actually change this word right up at the top. Now, why might you want to change that? I'll tell you, what we had in mind when we ended up recommending that this be able to be changed by you, we were thinking about situations where a person might not have a formal diagnosis of Pica, or perhaps you want to use this protocol even for somebody who puts inedible objects in their mouth, even though they may not have a history of actually swallowing them. So, excuse me. So, so you have the ability to name this in a way that will make sense to your staff. If you want to continue to keep it as Pica, you can keep it that way, or you can name it in whatever way is intuitive for the staff to know what it's for. If you remember, that's always our objective with support documents, to make sure that support staff understand what they need to do to prevent a problem and then how to respond if the problem happens. So you have that ability to name it in a way that makes sense. Great. You've got other familiar things such as the person's name, where is this being used, and the date. Just a quick, I always look for opportunities to remind you of core pieces of support documents. That location of use is a good reminder that that support documents are always tailored to the location where they're used. So we don't want to just see a Pica protocol that's for home and work, for example, if the person goes to work, but it would be a tailored protocol to each location. Then there's the date. just a quick reminder that with support documents, that date should always reflect the most recent date that this was modified. So it's always the last time you made changes to it. I've actually had several conversations, and this is a quick sidebar, but I've had a couple conversations recently with folks who still believe that every protocol and every support document needs to be opened every year and redated at the time of the ISP. And just a reminder that that's not the expectation. You only need to reopen and change the date if there's something that needs to be changed on that support document. And I'm sure with our May ISP forum with Terry Rittner, where we're scheduled to be talking more about support documents, I'm sure we'll be reminding you of that point then as well. Okay, let's continue with the Pica protocol. Thanks for that quick sidebar. So how do we know the person's at risk of ingesting inedible objects? So is there a diagnosis of Pica? Mention that here. Have you observed situations where the person places these inedible objects in their mouth, or they have a history of swallowing certain things? You're going to write that here, describe it. Have objects been found in their bowel movements? Describe how often it's been seen. If it was one incident, if it's something that seems to happen periodically, you give information here that it helps people understand what they're looking for and what and why this is a problem. Does the person have specific objects that you believe that they favor? Are they looking for certain things that they're eating or placing in their mouth? You're going to describe that right here. Section 1, preventions. If you remember, all support documents must list preventative steps, things that we're doing to prevent. That's always our first and foremost goal. That's why it's section 1 on the document, so that our first focus with the staff is to think about what we're doing to prevent this from happening in the first place. So we always include removing and keeping the environment free of all objects that the person could put in their mouth. Observe the person at all times for putting anything in his or her mouth. And an environmental scan of every place a person could access is expected, and then instructions for scanning the environment. What do staff need to know? How often should they check? Where should they check? Are there any other special instructions? List that here. And then there are, of course, sort of fill-in-the-blank spaces here if there's anything else you want to add. And I just want to make sure I had said, I'm not positive that I had said out loud, so I just want to take this opportunity to say, this exact form is not mandated to be used. It is provided as a tool for you, but it is not mandated to be used every time someone you know experiences Pica or is at risk of ingesting inedible objects. This is here as a tool. You may already have something that you believe is meeting the needs of the person, and the ISP team believes is meeting the needs of the person. But at this point, this was released as a tool with points to consider that health issues advisory team believes belong in a Pica protocol. Okay, so we talked about preventions. That's our first important step. Now let's talk about observable signs and symptoms of the problem. So this is one that, honestly, the committee, as I recall, had a little bit of a struggle because we just wanted to point out that often those signs and symptoms of Pica can look the same as symptoms of constipation or even aspiration or various stomach problems. So if you're familiar with the ISP manual, you know that that it has always said if someone is at risk, or at least in recent history, it has said that if someone's at risk of ingesting inedible objects or placing inedible objects in their mouth, you want to make sure that the support documents include instructions to monitor for blockage or perforation of the bowel. So what the committee has tried to do here is list out some of those identifiable symptoms that there was blockage blockage or perforation of the bowel. So inedible objects are found in the BM. That would be an obvious sign that something had been eaten, right? Is the person refusing to eat? Has the person refused to eat for, and then you would fill in the blank with how many meals? And while I'm looking at that point, I had a good conversation with somebody who asked about this and said, does that mean, if we type, 3 meals, does that mean now we've never had to track every time the person eats a meal? Do we now have to track every time the person eats a meal just so we can show if there was a problem? And we talked about that with the licensing team, and the licensing team's response was, the staff just need to be trained to document the exception, document the problem. So in this situation, staff would be expected to document that he didn't eat for 3 meals and then show that they're following this protocol. Other documentation that you expect would be up to you as an organization, but simply having this line here doesn't then mean that you have to be doing some sort of additional tracking just on a daily basis, if that makes sense. Here's a checkbox for if the person is refusing to eat or drink, if you think that could be a sign of or symptom of pica for this person. Abdominal pain with or without fever, spitting up, saliva or vomiting, a hard protruding abdomen, tender to the touch stomach, complaining of not feeling well or not wanting to get out of bed, go to work, or do things the person usually enjoys. These are just all of these general signs and symptoms, but things that could be an indicator of pica or of a blockage of the bowel. So walking stooped over if it's not usual for the person, excessive drooling in persons who don't normally drool. Now here we get to one other very specific point, and that is if the person has had no or only small stools in a certain number of days. So if you fill that out, notice this extra point here that says this must match any timelines indicated on a constipation protocol if present. So to say that another way, if the person already has a constipation protocol and it has that line checked that says has had no or only small stools in X number of days, these should match. We couldn't think of any situation where you would have a different response on different protocols, because how are the staff to know, well, this no or only small stool in 2 days was because of pica, but this one in 3 days was because of constipation, and follow which protocol do they follow? So we would expect that they would match, and they would essentially be following both protocols in that situation. Okay, so next up, Section 3. What to do if any signs and symptoms are observed. These are steps to take if a pica episode is witnessed or if signs and symptoms of pica are observed that do not require an urgent response, meaning we don't feel like we need to immediately call 911, but it doesn't meet the criteria for 911 that are listed below. So, but we have seen some of those signs and symptoms. So what do we do? Who do we contact? And then you check the appropriate box. Who is it that the staff are expected to contact? Generally, in the field, staff are expected first to contact their supervisor, unless there is a nurse-client relationship in this case, and often then they're instructed to contact the nurse first. That's up to you and your organization and specific supports that you're providing. But check the appropriate box for your staff and your situation. Where should it be documented that they have contacted this person and what instructions it is that they are following? So supervisors are expected to know the situation, are expected to know about the support needs of the individual and to be able to advise staff on what other action they may need to take once they're advised of this, and or the nurse. If it's the nurse, where should we document that we contacted the nurse and what her or his instructions were and how we're following up on that. Typically, in this situation, we would see progress notes. Do we need to notify anyone else? So if this is a home protocol, do we need to notify work that we've observed this problem and let them know that we're monitoring? And then we need to, then the next instruction is to monitor bowel movements until the object passes. And then here's a place to indicate the specific time. Oops, excuse me. Let's get this back. Place to notify, to note the specific timeline for when we should notify the physician if we have not noticed the object passing after a certain number of days. So, you know, whatever it is that you enter there, that's, oh, it keeps bouncing, excuse me. That's what staff would be expected to do. Okay. So there is section 3, a quick walkthrough. So now, let's talk about urgent response instructions. There's more information here in this section 4 than there are in any of the other protocols because we've included criteria when you would need to call poison control or when you would need to contact the physician immediately, and the possibilities that you may choose to call the physician within 1 day. So but let's start at the top. You'll recognize a number of these that are typical on most of these protocols, and frankly, in any situation, whether the person has a protocol or not. The person is blue or not breathing, wheezing, working hard to breathe. The person is having difficulty swallowing. They appear gravely ill, or you're concerned about their immediate health and safety. Again, we always call 911 in those situations. Person is severely coughing. Poison control. If the material swallowed might be a poison or is a medicine, call poison control and follow their instructions. And we've printed the number right on there for you, so there's no question. And call the physician immediately if the individual has swallowed magnets, batteries, or any sharp object, or has developed a hard and painful abdomen. If you're unable to obtain medical care within an hour, it advises take to urgent care or emergency department. It just sort of spells out some expectations right there. And then the committee developing this believes that there may be some situations where the staff could be advised to call the physician within 1 day, and that could include, they were considering issues like threads from fabric, rocks, or if the physician has made any, this may be a problem that has been going on for years, and you may have discussed it with the physician, and the physician may have said, you know, when this happens, just make sure I'm aware of it. So you may choose to use, to fill out this box with some specific items. Are there any other situations where staff would need to call 911? List it here. After calling 911, contact and follow any instructions given from who? Who should staff contact? What? Generally, as I said above, typically staff are instructed to contact their supervisor. And then supervisor may assist with the various other notifications, such as services coordinator, family or guardian, physician, others, etc. Always, if we're calling 911, we would expect an incident report to be written. But then other things, other places staff would be expected to document. We would see that here. Okay, and of course, as all of any support document should have the name of an author. So who wrote this? We want to see that right there in that space. Okay. So there was a lightning fast walkthrough of the Pica Protocol. As I mentioned, that is available on the OTAC website. If you have questions about that Pica Protocol, you're welcome to submit them in the questions box here on control panel of your webinar control panel. And I was just going to flip over to our website and show you on the ISP forms page. I'm going to let it load here. Here's the ISP forms page. And if I scroll about halfway down, you're going to find we have the Pica Protocol. It was updated last month. I think I said February, but I guess I said that wrong. I think it was actually March 7th. There it is. So if you just click here, you'll be able to download the Pica Protocol. That's how you can access it. Save it to your computer. You've got it.